Good morning. It's great to be with you this morning. And I appreciate the musical spontaneity this morning, which was really fun. This morning when Dannon asked me to give the sermon, no, I'm kidding. I got advance warning. But this week has been ridiculous, and I don't need to get into all of the reasons why I was crazy, busy, and stressed, and a million projects came due all at the same time. That always happens. But suffice it to say, this week was ridiculous. It was bonkers. And I appreciate God sort of creating this idea of the lectionary, which we preach from here at Hollywood. It's sort of an outline for the entire church year of what texts go with the liturgy of the church calendar. And so just so happened in my bonkers week that I, for some reason, agreed to preach also. And the text for this week is Psalm 23, which is something that I really, really needed to study this week. So I spent the week with Psalm 23 and just have a few thoughts to share with you this morning. And I'm going to start with Psalm 23 in good old King James Version, which, when's the last time we did that here in Hollywood? So read along with me. I think it's up on the screen. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is the word of the Lord. This is the incredibly comforting, gloriously relaxing word of the Lord. In a stressful, unjust, hectic, threatening world, what glorious source of inspiration and comfort. It's a beautiful psalm, and it's no wonder it's become one of the best-known passages in the Bible, right? Probably second only to John 3:16. We know it so well, and for me, it's sort of, especially in the King James Version, I chose the King James Version to start with just because I think nostalgia and tradition, there's a little bit of that in me, I guess. I work in classical music after all. So tradition is somewhat what I do all day long. But for me, in the King James Version, it sort of conjures up these images of soft focus paintings of Jesus as a shepherd leading sheep through grassy green knolls by pristine and serene mountain ponds. It's all quite lovely, really, Psalm 23. But I have to say, I also have kind of a problem with Psalm 23, because if Psalm 23 is supposed to be like life as a child of God, how come my life doesn't look like Psalm 23? This world that is described in the psalm is not my world. And this extends beyond the specifics of Psalm 23 and into a number of the Bible's core values, too. According to the Bible, as a follower of Christ, I'm supposed to be a peacemaker. I'm supposed to love my enemies. I'm supposed to tend to brokenness wherever it may be found. Following Jesus means that I constantly have to live in the gap between what God longs for in our world and what is, between his ideal and reality. And that's a gap that, at least for me, can often feel as large as, oh, I don't know, the Grand Canyon. It's big. And I don't know about you, but I find living like Christ lived is awfully hard. Living the gospel, being a small and admittedly flawed representation of God's kingdom here on earth, is not something that comes naturally to us as human beings. And to me, Psalm 23 is a magnification of the gap between our reality and God's ideal. It kind of makes me want to ask God, hey, are you talking to me in this one? Or, have you seen our planet? Have you seen what's going on in our world? Because there's not a lot of green pastures, and the waters are not still down here. Our world doesn't look like what you're describing, God. In Psalm 23, there is no want. The pastures are green, the waters are still, our souls feel whole. The right path is clear, the dark valley is not frightening. Comfort comes easily. People who hate each other sit down and eat together. There is anointing, there is abundance, there is goodness, there is mercy. There is God's house, open and ever present. This is not my world. It doesn't fit my reality. Am I right? I mean, is this just me, or is this everybody? This is not our world. What's going on? So I want to pause here and talk just a little bit about the structure of this psalm and look at a couple of the metaphors as well. Believe it or not, looking at literary devices might actually help us bridge that gap between God's picture and reality. So we're going to do a little like English Lit 101. The metaphors first, and just two of them very quickly. I did some reading about shepherding this week because I didn't really know a lot about it. And apparently there's a video of something called extreme shepherding in New Zealand, where a group of extreme shepherds got their flocks together and had them make all these crazy shapes on the side of a hill in New Zealand, like a bunch of sheep, and then they strung Christmas lights on them and shot them off in fireworks. So it looks like they were shot off in fireworks. They actually weren't shot off. But anyway, it's a video, it's online, you Google extreme shepherding, and oh, by the way, then it turns out it's actually a hoax, and they're not actually doing that. It was a commercial for Samsung TVs. So, bummer, there's not actually something called extreme shepherding as much as I would like there to be. So one thing I learned about shepherding, though, that isn't a hoax, is that sheep don't lie down in green pastures. That is, sheep don't lie down in green pastures until after they're done eating, until their nutritional needs have been met. The other thing I learned about shepherding is that sheep don't drink from moving water, as you might suspect from reading Psalm 23. They also don't like to drink from water in which they can see their own reflections. So based on the context of the phrase in Psalm 23 and the original words in the Hebrew language and a bit of fact-finding about the drinking habits of sheep, we can sort of surmise that the psalmist is referring to one of two things when he talks about leading me beside still waters. Still waters may mean clear waters. The sheep can see all the way down to the bottom. There's nothing obscuring their view. Or this could also be that the shepherd leading the sheep by still waters is an active thing. He leads me beside still waters. He leads me beyond still waters. Maybe they're not standing still. Maybe he's leading me past the still waters because, as in the green pastures, my needs have already been met. My thirst has already been quenched. So, just a couple of things to think about based on my research into shepherding. Now the structure of Psalm 23, which I think is really interesting also. It's built on a modified chiastic structure. Experts will tell you it's not truly a chiasm because there are some literary issues here. It's not perfectly mirrored and whatever. But for our purposes, it's modified chiastic structure. That's fine. I'm not a literature, I don't have a degree in literature. But basically, chiastic structure is A, B, C, C, B, A. So the outer two ideas have a relationship with one another. Then as you move inwards, all of those ideas mirror one another across the literary form. And then when you get to the center, that's the most important theme of the particular piece of literature. This form shows up all over in the Bible. Like the book of Revelation, the entire book of Revelation is based on this structure. And it pops up in great works of literature as well. Beowulf is written in chiastic structure. The Iliad and the Odyssey, Paradise Lost, all sort of built on this structure. And you can see this very interestingly in Psalm 23. If you have access to a Bible or an app that has a Bible, and you can see the whole thing, pull it out and check it out. The first line is, "The Lord is my shepherd." The last line is, "I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." This is our place as sheep or children of God. You move inwards, "I shall not want. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." This is God's care and protection for us. Move in further a little bit. "He leadeth me beside still waters. My cup runneth over. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." And then as you move into the middle, and now we're here right in the center of Psalm 23, "For thou art with me." In the original Hebrew, there are exactly 26 words before and after "thou art with me." This is the point of Psalm 23. This is what we are desperate for. This is what we crave. Thou art with me. In my world, the pastures are often brown, and the waters are rolling dangerously fast, and our souls feel restless, and the right path is not clear, and the dark valley becomes our dwelling place, and comfort is hard to find, and yet God is with us. When we cannot love or sit down with the people who we disagree with, when there seems to be little goodness or mercy, God is with us. And God knows what our world is like because God is with us. Or as the writer Anne Lamott says, God's in the struggle with us. I like that. Thou art with me, the central theme of the psalm. And in the King James Version, everything before thou art with me is the psalmist talking about the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He does this, he does this, he does this. Then he gets to thou art with me, and all of a sudden he's talking to the shepherd. You do this, you do this, you do this. There's a transformation that happens, sort of upon the realization that thou art with me in these wonderful, blissful times of green pastures and still waters, and not in the other times as well. It's hard to feel that God's with us, though, sometimes when we find there is so much in life that we cannot control, and doing our best hasn't brought us closer to the still waters. Sometimes there's just too big of a gap or too much space between what we dream of and what is, between what we intend for ourselves, our people, our community, and our world, and what is actually unfolding. But this psalm shouts that literally in the middle of all of this, thou art with us. In the moments when it feels like everything is unraveling, or that we're stuck, or simply wandering in the darkness, thou art with us. In the space between where we dream to be and where we are, thou art with us. Thou art with me is the place we can rest. It's the refuge from a world that seems to shout, thou art nowhere. In his book, The Divine Conspiracy, the late philosopher Dallas Willard called the 23rd Psalm an exquisite summary of life in the kingdom. He said, the mind of the disciple should have it prominently displayed within to always foster the joy and peace of the kingdom, as well as to orient all his or her actions within it. This is an essential part of any curriculum for Christ-likeness. Positive engagement with these scriptures will bring kingdom order into our entire personality. Maybe it's not so much that this psalm imagines a world that doesn't exist, but perhaps it reminds us that the world is both how God imagines and what we experience. Part of who God is the energy that bridges our current reality with our longing, our dreams, our hopes for how we can live deeply and fully. God is doing that all the time in our lives. He's pulling us over that Grand Canyon-sized gap between our intentions and our actual selves. And for me, the amazing news is that even when the gap is still wide and when it's hard to live the way that we intend to, God is still there. God is still with us, no matter what, always and forever. Thou art with me. Thou art with you, even in the spaces between where you are and where you long to be. Because it turns out God is already busy pulling us all there, closer to him. Good news? Good news. And that's Psalm 23 for me. It is communion this week at Hollywood, and just as it is the shepherd's job to serve the sheep, it is our job as Christians to serve one another. Lean on me. The act of foot washing is a symbol of humility, of stepping outside of ourselves to care for others. It's a physical reminder of that we are all servants to one another and that we are all equal in God's eyes. There is no hierarchy. We are all one in Christ. So please join us for this ordinance of humility. In the junior room, we have foot washing basins set up. We do one room here at Hollywood for men and women. All are welcome in the same room. And then following our ordinance of humility, we'll come back here and eat the bread and drink the wine, the Lord's body and blood, communion meal. Thank you.